Welcome to Season 2 of Build and Grow, a series dedicated to helping businesses go beyond financial management to achieve financial growth, resilience, and innovation. As businesses continue to revive and pivot to new models in these times, your story is proud to partner with HSBC for another season of inspiring conversations, insights, and observations from some of the newest trendsetters in business and stalwarts of the ecosystem. Tune in to power your next phase of growth and business continuity.
Welcome to Season 2 of Build and Grow Money Matters, a series dedicated to helping businesses go beyond financial management to achieve financial growth, resilience, and innovation. As businesses continue to revive and pivot to newer business models in these times, your story is proud to partner with HSBC for another season of inspiring conversations, insights, and observations from some of the newest trendsetters in business and their stalwarts of their ecosystem, and they help businesses power the next phase of growth and business continuity. Today, we have with us Vivek Tiwari, founder and CEO of Medica Bazaar, which is India's largest B2B online marketplace for medical equipment and medical supplies. A little bit about Vivek. He's an IIM Calcutta alumnus. He's had successful leadership stints in MNCs, and he's also had decades experience in consumer services, primarily as a growth driver in companies like Nestle India, Tata Teleservices, Aircel Cellular, Tata Sky Limited, among others. In 2014, he started Medica Bazaar with the vision to make healthcare accessible and affordable. We are going to be talking about bridging the gap in the Indian healthcare system. So welcome, Vivek. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you, Vishal, for inviting me on this platform.
We're living in very interesting times. So what's up with you? What's going on during the COVID for you?
So COVID has been a mixed opportunity for us. We could see a lot of growth happening with COVID, especially looking at the requirement for different medical supplies from different medical institutions, and also looking at the personal protective equipment kind of category being abnormally, growing to certain levels. And we were there facing all these, requirements and ensuring that we are able to meet the demands of various medical institutions throughout the country. And more so with lockdown, it became really difficult for us to create the kind of seamless supply opportunity for all the medical centers. And we could see a massive challenge in terms of meeting the timeline or reaching out to hospitals on time or trying to deliver the material. And that's how we have been, fighting that initial few months, and later on it got a bit normalized. Now we are 80% back to normal. We don't see such major challenges, but it's been a really a great, kind of learning experience for us, and we could really do justice with it, I guess so, because we really met up to the expectations of our customers.
That's fantastic. So I want to talk a little bit about your journey so far. And,
Sure.
because Medica Bazaar is connected with more than 50,000 medical establishments, 150,000 independent practitioners. It has, 13,000 plus suppliers all over India for medical supplies. So,
Right.
if you can give us insight about your journey and making this entire ecosystem come on board your platform. How did that happen?
So Medica Bazaar is actually from my own experience. The entire business idea was driven with my own, kind of experience when I was setting up tertiary care clinics all over India. I set up about 43 clinics all over India, looking at tier 2, 3 towns, different locations and geographies to be covering with that kind of reach. In the duration of last in about 3 to 4 years, I met close to 2,000 hospitals all over the country, and realized there was a big pain point in terms of the medical supply efficiency, operational efficiency per se, and even looking at the price inconsistency, availability of various products and all of that, with a very difficult, kind of a situation to get into. Coming from organized industries like FMCG or telecom, it was really challenging for me to see that why we don't have such seamless opportunity in life-saving categories like medical supplies. And this led, to to thinking that we should have some strong digital intervention there for people to be connected, people to be making, decisions based on the availability and on the right price, which could lead to good quality care in our country. And that was the idea behind Medica Bazaar. So we started in a very humble, kind of situation. I started this around April 2015 with one of co-founders. His name is Ketan. He comes from the industry also. So we started in Mumbai. So we took that as the first, kind of place for success, or maybe pilot that project for success. Could really get up to about 800,000 customers in about 3 to 4 months. Initially getting sellers on board was a bit of challenge, because sellers in this category of products were never had an exposure to e-selling or kind of a digital selling, medium. Mostly they worked on order-to-order basis with customers, with hospitals, with doctors. They had no idea about distribution. They had no idea about market access. For them, few customers, as in a B2B category, would be their end of their world, and they think that this is the final what they can do with, with their product categories they were dealing with. Manufacturers also were not too keen to get into a larger opportunity to look at. So overall, this was a very difficult category to crack initially with a digital intervention. But we kept on moving with it. I think the first 6 months was more of establishing the concept and meeting various sellers, convincing them what we are trying to do, putting them on board. Initial successes came in with few sellers getting on board and really looking at some business coming from few customers who were there on the platform. Initial customers who could come on the platform were looking at a larger product catalog, which we did not have to offer. So we were just trying to build the catalog as fast as we could by engaging more and more sellers on the platform. So initially the business was very difficult as a category to establish, getting the conviction in our ecosystem of sellers and customers. So we just lived with it. We just made sure that we were trying to fight harder and make sure that this happens. But somehow, that first, after 6 months, maybe we started getting good traction. The customers were responsive. They kept on putting an order on the platform. And over, more so, we could see a lot of, growth happening through order by telecalling, right? People were not looking at just a digital intervention for ordering, but they could see that, yes, Medica Bazaar has a larger catalog, so I can call up any helpline anytime and try to place my order. So we created a team of inside sales specialists also in order to meet the requirement of customer. Typically, healthcare has been a very low-touch digital, industry from the beginning. So we could see that challenge coming in. So we created certain, kind of pivots based on the initial challenges what we were facing. So basically creating an inside sales specialist team, or to create a structure wherein a quotation download would be much more central to their decision making rather than directly placing an order, because this was all business selling, and business selling may be at times driven with a lot of decision making, kind of steps. So we created something industry first as maybe download quotation option rather than direct buying from the platform. And we could see a massive surge with more than 800,000 quotations being downloaded by different, kind of customers or different prospects throughout the country in a day. And that led to, a massive inclination towards the platform initially. And that's how we started building across different cities. So from Mumbai, we moved to different smaller cities in Maharashtra, and then to Ahmedabad in Gujarat, and so on and so forth to different states.
No, this is fantastic, right? I think any startup watching this would appreciate how you scale too. Now my next question is about positioning, differentiating yourself, acquiring that base and keeping that base, right? So how would you manage this? I mean, it is not going to be easy when you start up, especially in an age-old industry that is so touch and feel, like you said, right? And they wanted to speak to people also, so you had a telecalling line for them too, right? So in that case, how do you position yourself to all these brick and mortar hospitals and the primary care centers? How did you go about doing that? And how did you acquire that base, and how do you grow that base over the last 5 years? How difficult was it? Can you give us some insight there?
Sure. So we learned from our experience, and we kept on building business based on whatever the real customer problems were. Initially, we realized that the real problems which I faced as a customer on the other side of the table when I was actually looking for good, reliable, large, medical suppliers, the biggest challenge was the availability of product. That's the catalog, right? I had to go to 400, 500 kind of suppliers to look at the real opportunity. If I was running a dialysis clinic, I was running a tertiary care clinic, I would need maybe 800, 2000 SKUs to manage the entire requirement. For this, I had to go to maybe hundreds of sellers to actually be connected with. That's the first, bottleneck where you need to create a team for doing that. And then we realized that if we have a larger catalog, it was initially, solving the problem of, for a customer to look at a larger catalog option and look at one reliable supplier who could meet the demand for them. Then we went ahead and even looked at options, which were not there with the supplier, like options for online payments, option for EMIs, option for different kind of payment options, which essentially a traditional brick and mortar supplier cannot offer. Then we also started looking at increasing our catalog to certain categories which were not there at all on digital platforms. Say for medical equipment category, everyone came to us and told us that equipment can't be sold online, or equipment cannot be traded online, or people cannot do that. But we had a firm belief that if cars could be put online, which was such a high touch and feel category, if we were seeing that emergence of companies like Car Deco or Cars 24, we had the option of putting even medical equipment online. And today we have one of the largest catalog in medical equipment as well. And we are selling one of the best high-end medical equipment, may not be through online medium, but at least as a catalog, we serve a major, kind of problem for medical providers to look at such catalog and look at the efficient, options around, for different kind of equipment they are trying to buy. So we moved to increasing our categories, like from equipment, from medical disposable consumables to equipment, to also adding dental as a category, to also adding pharma as a category, and trying to build a complete comprehensive, kind of requirement around in a medical center. And then even looking at from the buying opportunity side. So we created a model like a value procurement organization where a hospital could buy 100% supplies through Medicabazaar. So not just a catalog business, but also to make sure that you give them 100% contracted solution. If they are buying worth, say, $2 million worth of medical consumables or medical supplies in a year, how could you make it much more efficient by offering a complete contracted solution to them? And they can quickly have a kind of view in terms of whatever product they are buying. So we created a complete catalog opportunity for them based on their choice and preferences. And they did not get into any kind of cart selection or any kind of product selection on a regular buying opportunity. They had maybe 400, 500 products they were buying, and we were giving them a complete selection based on that. So we also created a VPO model, which is going to be a big kind of change story in medical procurement in India, because we learned from experiences of other countries that how efficient the distribution systems were, what was a GPO in US or European kind of countries. So we learned from these experiences and trying to build much more smarter solutions for markets like India and make it available for our customers. So these are few changes we kept on doing in the business. Then we also launched a platform called Visi, which is AI ML based intuitive platform for making your working capital much more smarter and efficient. You know that what is your number of overstocking products, understocking products. Even if you're not a VPO customer with Medicabazaar, you know essentially that if you have a VZ integrated with your system, with your HMS or HI system, it's a zero entry, kind of a tool. It just takes out the data and tries to create entire dashboard or view for you, which is there for you to know that, yes, you are running with more than 30-40% additional working capital, which may not be required for a hospital to look at. And now hospitals reeling under such pressure for cash management and looking at delays in reimbursements from insurance companies and government. Working capital is a major concern for them. So basically, we learned from all the experiences what we had with our customers and tried to build our solution by keeping customer at the center point. So this is how we kept on building business we kept on adding new and new products, and we're still in the journey of creating much more in coming days.
Vivek, that's so fascinating, and you're absolutely right. Hospitals have to manage 1,000 SKUs. A hospital CEO might have dashboards, but to work with 1,000 odd suppliers or 100 odd suppliers itself can be a nightmare. And I'm glad your platform really helps. So, I want to go on to the point of with scale comes fundraising and how important is that, right? So you've raised capital from some of the biggest names. You've got Elan Corporation, you've got Sasaki Foods, CBC Company Limited, Koi's Investment, Mitsui Sumitomo Insurance Venture Capital. These are Japanese names, some of them. What is the experience like? Why would they invest in a platform like yours? I see Sasaki Foods also. Foods and healthcare, sometimes I don't get the match. But if you could tell us, what is the experience like with these people?
So let me also give a perspective on our investors. I think I have to put the the leading names for the investors table we have. So we have investors from different parts of the world, like Rebright Partners as one of our earliest investors, which kept on investing. They are in Japan and Singapore. We have few prominent angel investors also. Like Arun Venkatachalam from Murugappa family. We have Mr. Sunil Kalra, one of the leading angel investors in India, who kept on investing in every round. That shows the kind of interest they had with this business. Initially this business, nobody understood that what medical supplies were, but these people actually took the faith and real, they could understand the opportunity quite well. Then we had Health Quad as one of our leading investors, which invested in last 2 rounds for us. It's a venture capital arm of Quadria Capital, and they understand healthcare pretty well. Dr. Pinak Shikhande is on our board from Healthcare, Health Quad VC. And then we have Ackerman Van Haren Group from Belgium. It's a large financial group from Belgium, which does a lot of business-centric investments, more so which can offer them sustainable, kind of, business opportunity, and also can solve the real problems in society, right? Somewhat more impactful businesses they invest in. They're a very large group from Belgium. Then we had Koi's Investment. Koi's from one of the leading families in Belgium, which actually invest in impact ventures and socially driven ventures, which is impacting a larger segments in society or larger population in society, and so on. We had the other names which you just took. So all these investors came with some kind of thinking towards the business. Mostly the ones which I've just said are mostly either healthcare driven investors or investors who are looking at creating value, not just by building wealth, but also creating some real impact in the society. So these are few names which really helped us. We also have investors which are from industry, like we have Samina Hamid, who's the executive vice chairperson of Cipla, is a direct investor in the company. Mr. Umang Bohra is the global CEO and MD of Cipla, is also a direct investor in the company. We have names like Karan Singh and Arpan Seth from Bain & Company, who are direct investors in the company. So basically people from different backgrounds and different, different kind of profiles actually came and invested within the company. Because see, healthcare impacts everyone, right? If you have the right healthcare system, it is going to impact everyone. That's how they believed in Medica Bazaar. And this is how, it feels really encouraging and proud to build a platform like this, that people are believing in you as an entrepreneur, your idea as an entrepreneur, and they are trying to support your venture to that extent. So this actually, kind of really peps up, the journey and then the mood of the entrepreneur to look at.
Vivek, it speaks a lot about a person such as you and your co-founder, simply because I think the idea itself is very focused. If you have to advise anybody here, right? Sticking on to the fact that you met all these stellar names in business, people from the Murugappa Group, Bain & Capital, all of them, right?
Yeah.
How do you manage to convince such people? If there's one sentence on what would win them over to you, what would it be? Why would they sit with you and say, okay, this is an idea that I like? Because I'm sure a lot of people would thinking of an idea is easy. Did they like the execution part of the plan? Was that the reason they came into the business?
Yeah, see, execution is important. Idea is important, but more so entrepreneur's belief in the idea and to stay with it is most important. My journey as an entrepreneur was based on my own problems, right?
Correct.
My own challenges, and it was an idea which was not borrowed or not, just being driven on the fly, where I could think of doing something. It was more so because of my own experience. So I had to make sure I make it successful. So I had to live with this idea. And I was so passionate when I was talking to them that with my passion and energy, they thought that, no, he's the guy who can solve this problem. And that's how the entrepreneur, kind of provides that kind of, vibes or energy when he's talking about his business or idea to an investor. That investor believes in an entrepreneur. So I think it is important for an entrepreneur to consume and live with that idea and make sure that he's succeeding with that idea, every day, and he's trying to build a great opportunity with that idea. And that opportunity could impact a lot of lives going forward. That was the, kind of, I would say, most important factor which any investor would look at. And that's how even most of them would have looked at the same, while they never gave me a personal feedback that I was so fascinated with you, Vivek. While everyone told me that I think if this is a problem which you identified, and if somebody could do it the best, you are the guy. So
Fantastic.
If that is the belief you get from your investors, I think this is how, you really feel proud about what you're doing, and you keep on moving with higher, kind of momentum or energy behind. So that's what I can tell about the.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, you recently had a cash infusion, I think this June, from Ackermans and Van Haren. So in terms of the future roadmap with this fresh funding that you've had, what does 18 months look like to you? It's an unfair question to ask, because I think as an entrepreneur, I think you divide time between short-term goals, long-term goals, much like how we plan our lives. What insight would you give about, how you look at the future for Medica Bazaar?
So we are going quite strong. We see this year being a year of massive learning, challenge, experience. We really fought to get the best out of our, systems and our execution capabilities. So next 18 months going to be more on execution, building our presence on ground by infrastructure like supply chain infrastructure, fulfillment centers, creating more of technology platforms around. We are really investing in technology. We are moving from a business technology company to a very product centric company, where we invest in technology to build real solutions for the problems within our customers' framework and even within our suppliers' framework. So we are investing a lot in technology. So next 18 months are going to be quite an important journey for us in terms of expanding our team or building our infrastructure or investing in technology or getting the most out of technology. That's what we are looking at. This last round was just a tranche which was given by one of our investors just for business continuity. But we are looking at raising another round shortly, which will be there on the cards, and we will announce that at an opportune moment. But but we are looking at massive growth now, because we are also seeing a good traction coming on the platform, not just within India, but from outside India, where countries from African markets or Middle Eastern countries or Southeast Asian countries are also there on Medica Bazaar platform. And more so post-COVID, this has become even stronger because a lot of traffic is being routed from these places on our platform now. So we find a good opportunity for Medica Bazaar to expand even international markets as well.
I really look forward to that growth of yours. I mean, do you think you briefly touched upon the pandemic and how businesses were affected but how it worked in your favor in many ways? Do you think being a digital first brand has worked in your favor? And how has the engagement been in terms of growth during the COVID? Can you touch upon that a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. Digital first brand has been, in a major favor to us, because we had seen massive surge in traffic also during pandemic. In fact, we tripled in our daily active users number. We had seen a massive number of orders coming in online without any physical intervention or without even call intervention. So obviously, being digital first company, I think we found a lot of relevance with pandemic situation. People were not looking for physical meetings, so obviously they kept on looking at digital platform. They kept on looking at various options they wanted to buy through the platform. So it really worked in our favor during pandemic. And we see that journey being continuing now. So there is no major drop happening. That's a good sign. Actually, during pandemic, post-pandemic, if you see, there is a lot of shift happening between, the time during pandemic, which was complete lockdown situation, then the time today, which is not a complete lockdown, but about 80-90%, we are back to normal. In this situation also, we see that traffic, momentum there, that's a good sign for our business. And that is how we see even going forward, people are much more inclined to digital adoption, because people find, even we are doing most of the transactions, even customers are talking digitally now. If they have to talk to a few of our colleagues, they said they either call or maybe they set up a meeting or something. So that is how we are seeing that, the digital shift is happening, which is good for our business. And that's how, we believe that this will be even stronger in days to come in future.
Okay. And during the pandemic, did you look at your business processes? Was there something that you had to change, pivot? What advice would you give to entrepreneurs in terms of pivoting, if at all, how you did it? What's the new normal for you?
So the business processes, in fact, didn't change much for us, because we were a kind of healthcare centric, or health tech centric organization, and more so, especially into B2B supplies. And we were doing the same thing, but we increased our customer outreach, right? We were just not a company which was focused just on, say, medical centers. We kept on getting a lot of requests from corporates, from commercial establishments. People figured out that Medica Bazaar is a medical supplies enterprise, a medical supplies platform. So people from other, kind of industries or sectors also were there on the platform, looking at various options, whether it was a PPEs or whether it was even buying ventilators for donations, even buying certain categories like as low as mask or sanitizers. So we could see a lot of customers from different segments also coming on the platform. Even we tied up with industry bodies like CII. We tied up with various other industry bodies as well, where people looked at Medica Bazaar as one of the preferred options for any kind of medical supplies. And that gave us a very strong momentum for the business. That customer, I would say, shift actually made us even more stronger during COVID time. So even when hospitals were not fully functional, we could meet up our revenue, kind of targets with this kind of opportunities around. So that was a very good learning and experience for us. We did not pivot much in business. We did not open up new lines or whatever, but we kept on serving customers across different segments. That is what I can tell, in terms of the change, what we could see in the business. Apart from that, we saw a lot of, products which were earlier not so much in demand actually coming, highly in demand. So how to meet up on the supply side was much more important for us. So we kept on tying with various domestic manufacturers, international manufacturers, trying to bring more prominence in terms of our approach to them, and telling them that we are becoming a big, opportunity suppliers for you, and we really need inventory on time for our meeting the demands of our customers. So overall, it's been a, kind of very good a platform to engage with even manufacturers on the higher volume side, where they were looking at platforms like Medica Bazaar to offer them that kind of a solution. So even on the supplier side, we could build that traction with manufacturers and even with local suppliers, and trying to really get them a good market opportunity. In fact, just to tell you, like in last 6 to 8 months for the COVID period, we could see about 1,500 to 2,000 odd manufacturers and suppliers just coming and registering on the platform only for COVID products for Medica Bazaar. So that is what, we could bring the change, the way, business was done for various smaller manufacturers also. During this lockdown phase, they were accessing digital platform to get onto the customers. That's what really offered them as a solution.
Nice. Knowing whatever has happened so far, I think there's some permanent changes in the industry that you're in. So how do you think the health tech industry will evolve, going out of this COVID now? And that's where you stand out also, because you said digital is here to stay. A lot of manufacturers have access to pan-India, pan-international, in fact, right? So where do you stand out here, knowing with the changes that are going to be permanent going forward?
I think health tech industry overall has seen growth across different segments. Ours is a digital buying platform, right? It's a B2B platform. And we have seen that growth too. But mostly if you see like online consultation has seen a massive growth. With OPDs being restricted in healthcare centers or hospitals, the online consultation has seen massive growth. In fact, I read somewhere that Practo's traffic at one point in time increased to about 10x than what it was doing pre-COVID. Certainly, other online consultation platforms also could see the massive growth happening. Then again, e-pharmacies could see massive growth in terms of medicine delivery and kind of pandemic, effect, which had brought in with restricted movement. So people were ordering online medicines and they were getting deliveries. So I think e-pharmacy growth was there across B2C segment of pharmacy delivery. Online diagnostics also saw a massive surge in bookings, etc. So I think these are the platforms, especially which are more consumer driven, and people were looking at accessing these platforms could see the real opportunity in the COVID. Apart from something like what Medica Bazaar could have seen in more B2B category side, I think B2C also saw a massive growth across different segments of engagement with customers.
Okay, and these changes are going to stay forever. I think even after a few years, when the vaccine's available, people will take to digital ordering. Hospitals will be more akin to ordering digital. Will that happen?
Yeah, I think it may not be at the same level, but definitely there will be a growth because this is also building a habit kind of in customer, right?
Absolutely.
Habit formation is a great pivot from one to another, kind of a business model. So once you are, there in that space that you really enjoy, ordering online as a customer, and you really want less of physical intervention, and you do not want to unnecessarily, get into that route of physical buying opportunity, then obviously it stays with you. So I think it is going to stay, and it is going to even grow stronger in future because digital is the future. We all know that, that everybody predicts that there will be huge surge in the way online, penetration is being done across different segments of industry or across different sectors as well. So it is going to grow and it is going to stay. And post-COVID also, there will not be a major change, across a physical or a digital buying, opportunity. Yeah. There will be, growth happening across digital, opportunities around. So obviously.
Okay. Yeah. Go on. Pardon me. Go on.
No, absolutely. I see that growth is going to be there, and it's going to be even stronger in coming days.
Okay. And for a digital business, I want to quickly touch upon, the onboarding and engagement that will continue. You see a lot of digital businesses spending to acquire customers, right? These are some of the biggest challenges. Like you said, it's a habit formation business. Yeah. You have to create this, and that's where the future lies. How do you handle the intuitive user onboarding and engagement in your company?
So, user onboarding mostly comes with the interest of actually getting into the specific areas where they want to deal with. Say, for example, in our kind of a business, the user onboarding happens from a typical medical institution to a doctor, to a dentist, to someone who is really looking at buying up, opportunity for running the clinic or hospital per se. So it's already growing. Like 50 to 60% of our active users or kind of users which come month-on-month basis are coming just organically and digitally. That's the change what we have seen when we were there a few years back. Only 10 to 20% of users were just coming, and that's the change already which has happened today, because users are really feeling it convenient, and we are making it much more convenient for them to come on on the platform and try to see products even without physical intervention. So that's the change which has already been happening, and it will even grow stronger in coming days, especially the users which are in locations which are not so easily covered physically. Let's take an example of tier 2, 3 and beyond. You cannot cover India all through by physical means, and we have seen that inefficiency of distribution across industries. Even if you want to make sure that your best possible distribution, still you find gaps and still you are not able to cover. And that's happened with industries like FMCG, where we saw the surge of even Big Basket as a category being built up on top of best distributed brands across the country, right? That means the users were looking at an option of digital onboarding or digital experience, which was missing at times like 10 years back or so. So here in this category also, I think the same thing will happen. So right now we are at a stage where it will grow even further. And obviously, we would see a massive shift happening from physical intervention to digital now. And that's what, the numbers are also, supporting in terms of our approach to customers.
What I also like is I heard companies can also offer product catalogs, complete catalogs on your platform.
Yes.
You want to
Yes.
talk about this catalog initiative and what it is?
Yes, absolutely. So we are offering companies a specialized, kind of catalog options also. They can get on to create their own catalog with entire range of products across different categories of product they deal with. We recently created few catalogs for leading brands like Roche or, some of the brands which are there, in a prominent space. And this is really solving the problem for these brands to actually get onto a complete catalog, kind of experience with the customer, where customer knows that yes, a particular brand has say, so many products to deal with and so many, kind of areas of, treatments to deal with and all of that. So it's going to be a very good support, in terms of whether it is a customer buying experience or whether it is a product display experience or whether it is, complete engagement with the customer or even with the supplier or seller on the other side. I think it's going to be a bit more stronger with kind of catalog option we are trying to put through now. And that's how we are seeing a massive number of opportunities, building around that. Smaller manufacturers per se are more than willing to even pay a premium for putting their catalog on Medica Bazaar. So similarly, for others also, you see, like in Amazon today, you see many small manufacturers who don't have access to physical means of distribution are more than willing to even pay a premium to put their catalog on Amazon. The similar, replication effect, what we see in Medica Bazaar also. Similarly, that's yeah.
That's so interesting. And a lot of people I've been reading a lot of stories around drones, and I heard you tied up with Zipline, an autonomous on-demand drone delivery service. Apparently this reduces delivery time for medicines and helps in emergency situations. Is this reality or science fiction? And will this be operational soon?
No, it is a reality, and it's not in India yet. But if you see the countries, which are into typical geographical restrictions, there in African market like Congo, Rwanda, these kind of nations, the third world countries, what we say, especially looking at the inaccessibility problem and all of them, where these companies have actually gone ahead and did a great, kind of association with various manufacturers, or even for typical products like blood products or vaccines, which need to be delivered across different geographies, in certain such areas to be considered. I think this is already happening all over the world now. Yes. And we see that as a great opportunity in India, because ours is a very big country, a country worth 833,000 square kilometers, with such a large number of population everywhere. 70% of our population stays in rural areas, and then about 30-40% are still not accessible by road, by the real good quality roads, right? And that's where the real opportunity lies. Now think of the vaccine, delivery model. If we have to vaccinate 140 crores people in this country, think of the real challenge involved, right? First is about distribution accessibility and making sure that every PHC or CHC center will have a vaccination available. Vaccine delivery should be there in the best conditions at which it is supposed to be, like in a cool chain condition or whatever. And it takes time for reaching these areas. It's not easy from a factory to let the vaccine be taken into smaller locations so easily, right? There are challenges, obviously. So I think drone as an option will really bring a greater efficiency by ensuring cutting the time in terms of vaccine delivery, making sure that you are able to reach out to even inaccessible areas where you have limitation by road, or by making sure that you are able to reach out to population even on hilly regions, or even the areas which are not so easily covered by different means of transportation. So I think it's a great opportunity for a country like ours. It may not impact 100% of our population, but yes, certainly impacts about 20 to 30% of our population who don't stay in very highly accessible areas. So I think considering the present challenges, and especially the category we are in, especially medical supplies, which is needed by everyone, right? Medical is as a category, has to touch everyone's life. So I think it's as a novel option for making the accessibility, is more important. And that is how we are really looking at this as an option for future.
Very nicely said. And I like your website because I go into it, you place emphasis on tier 2, tier 3 cities, and that
Yes.
you want to look at those areas as a major expansion plan for you. And that's
Yes.
also tied into your revenues where you said that you're eyeing a GMV of around 1,500 crore in
Mm.
financial year 21. I would
Mhm.
like to hear about this expansion plan in smaller cities, smaller towns, and tying it around the GMV. Will it expand? Was it as lucrative as the larger centers in India?
Yes, so we are looking at a revenue or the total GMV at about $200 million.
Mhm,
That's how we are trying to see the
mhm,
growth happening in this segment of
mhm,
business, especially looking at medical supplies as an opportunity now.
mhm.
Uh, Obviously, the growth has to be primarily driven by tier 2, 3, and that's how we have been seeing this happening in
Mhm.
the recent time also. Like 70% of our revenue actually comes from tier 2, 3. And that's a very strong kind of revenue driven model, what we have.
Yeah.
Because for them, for these customers who are there in tier 2, 3, for them, the biggest uh, opportunity is service, right? They have to get products on time. How do you make that product accessible to them from a factory to a customer is a challenge what we are solving today. So we have created levels like distribution centers, fulfillment centers, last mile delivery assortment centers, and then we have our own MBGO riders who are even working across different inaccessible areas where they pick up the products and they deliver across 10 to 12 locations by on two-wheeler, like in about 50 to 100-kilometer kind of a radius. So that's how we are trying to build that efficient model in terms of reaching out to these smaller locations or smaller inaccessible locations and the smaller cities around. So this has to be primarily driven, the entire revenue opportunity or GMV opportunity has to be primarily driven by the growth we see in tier 2. On top of it, we are also looking at, as I discussed just at the beginning, about the value procurement opportunity, which is more like consolidating supplies into these smaller centers, mid centers, and then trying to create a complete basket of products they can buy from Medica Bazaar, and just bypassing these hundreds of intermediaries and middlemen in between. So that's where we see a massive opportunity being built up across the segment, like in BPO category of business. So overall, I think these will be two major drivers. On top of it, we have dental as a category, which is also growing phenomenally. We also set up one of the dental labs in the country today, which is in uh, cooperation with a Japanese technology, and which is one of the best labs in the country, where we are even completing the entire customization on dental crowns and dental prosthetics. So trying to build momentum across the different business verticals we are dealing with, trying to build our efficiency to reach out to customers and to make sure that we are able to uh, deliver the products in the best possible manner to them and the best possible time to them. That's how we are trying to create
Nice.
as a business opportunity, and certainly it will lead to a higher growth in terms of GMV what we are looking at.
And certainly, like we discussed earlier, healthcare, we've just scratched the surface, lots to do.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay. Your advice to entrepreneurs now who are aspiring to become entrepreneurs or people who've lived through the pandemic, founded their companies, what advice would you give them? What advice would you give entrepreneurs to scale, build a company? Is there a philosophy to Vivek and how he built Medica Bazaar?
Absolutely. I think uh, the biggest advice from my side would be to build sustainable and long-term businesses. I think the three elements in any business which needs to be carefully looked at is continuity, sustainability, and definitely growth. These are three, critical elements in any business. Uh, in today's VUCA world, I think nothing is permanent. So business or businesses which are trying to build should withstand the challenges of the future. So I think building a very strong, sustainable model or kind of business which can continue on its own is most important in today's time. We have seen what happened to few businesses which could just not withstand the challenge of an epidemic like what we had in COVID, right?
Yes.
The entire shared economy was completely collapsed. What we
Yeah.
saw as carpooling opportunity by Uber, Ola. Nobody wants to now get into a
Obviously.
car, kind of a ride sharing opportunity, or even what we saw as Airbnb, kind of model of business, which could
Yeah.
see a real kind of a challenge with this kind of situation. So nothing is permanent in today's world. So any business which needs to be built, it should be on a very strong framework, should be on very strong fundamentals, and should be sustainable and continuous in the nature. That's what I can tell entrepreneurs to really look at. Yes.
Okay. Since this is a show called Money Matters, is there a financial ideology that you live by? And how do you work towards growing your money, personally or for the company?
So I would rather say that a true entrepreneur, does not believe too much in financial ideology, but he's firm believer in ideas and making them happen. And for them, money is or finance is a means to achieve, that idea or that success. But yes, I really find, that financial ideology is important, and we should make sure that whatever wealth we are building or whatever value we are creating should be there for everyone. So whether it is for an entrepreneur himself, or for the shareholders, or for the employees, like we definitely provide ESOP options and all, should be there for everyone and should be shared. And that's how we should build any opportunity around. More so in terms of looking at personal wealth as a true entrepreneur. I think for an entrepreneur, the personal wealth just is not all about financial wealth. I think it's more about the wealth what you created with your internal stakeholders or with your external stakeholders, and then try to build your ideas around to a great business opportunity for them. I think that's what really matters for an entrepreneur. That's what I personally believe in. In terms of my own personal finance or wealth, I'm not too money-centric person, so I normally invest in certain places or certain areas which are very generic in nature. So I am not a very very interested or too much interested into areas like stock trading or whatever. But certain areas where I find there is a relevance, where I can put some money for some time, and then whenever I need them, I can use that money is good enough for me. And that's how I believe in. So
great. You're a man of ideas. You're a man of ideas. So that's important.
Yes, exactly.
And okay, as Money Matters, we also want to know, as a startup, as a digital first company, what are your expectations from banks today? Because banks play a pivotal role in the growth of the economy, and being a startup, what do you want from them?
I think banks should really come out of this mindset of I would say that banks should work more like venture capital or venture debts, and may not be that 100% of their lending capital should be towards that, but they should earmark some of their lending capital, especially for entrepreneurship, where risk and return may match accordingly. And also, I believe that lending to a large number of startups than to a large corporate with a very high lending opportunity, and risking their entire lending basket to one large corporate, like we have seen in last few instances where large corporates have defaulted on payments, and it's been a real nightmare for bank to collect money from them. I think they should really match their risk to reward ratio by really investing in startups, and that's how I think they would be able to see a massive change in the way their lending opportunity works out, or even supporting entrepreneurship per se would really create massive employment opportunity and real wealth in the country. So I think they should really think of that as an option. That would be my suggestion to banks per se, and even for venture debts. Yes.
Okay, you want to touch upon the venture debts part, please?
Yeah. So even for venture debts, I think banks normally provide lending capital through collaterals, or they hardly do a non-collateral based lending. But they have to really think like what venture debts are doing. You might take certain higher percentage on the risk to reward ratio, but you really need to consider that debt to an entrepreneur, to a small business, cannot be based on collateral, right? It has to be based on a very firm belief or strong ideas, like the way venture debts are working. And I don't know, banks are lending to venture debt agencies, but they don't lend directly to any startup or any kind of businesses, emerging businesses per se. So I think that's where their thinking needs to be more towards lending to startups, where where they could see a massive, kind of change, and even the returns are quite good. So even venture debt as a category is one of the options where banks can actually look at, where there could be a very good, kind of opportunity to engage with the startups per se.
Now, on that note, Vivek, that was a fascinating conversation. And obviously, it's not just money matters, but you're also growing your company with ideas. So that is more interesting. And guys, for those of you who watch this, check out Medica Bazaar and how they've built an ecosystem from doctors all the way to hospitals and medical institutions. And they've connected tier 2, tier 3 cities and worked with thousands of suppliers. We have a very good company in our hands, and they're a digital first company. Thank you very much for being on the show, Vivek, and we'll see you soon. And for those of you who watch this program, Money Matters, we'd appreciate it if you came back and saw another episode with another great entrepreneur. Thank you very much, guys.